Right, what have we got here? It's a bit of a rare gem today, so can we have a hushed silence? So it is the Emisar D4. Now this has obviously been filled out of the factory here. The specific one I've got, but I will go through what they are and what all the options are, is the grey version, and it's the XPL high. High stands for high intensity. It looks like the V1 or V2, and the 3D is the tint. But I'll go into all of that because there are a lot of options that come with this. So let's get in, because I can't wait to see this. This is something of a hot rod in the flashlight world. So let's have a look. Now, first things off, I did stump up for the clip, so you won't get that by default, unfortunately. So I think that's a little bit naughty of them, making you pay for it. But it is a decent, good quality one. No, it's rock solid, so we'll put that to one side. What else do you get in here? Spare O-rings. I like to see that. All the decent manufacturers, I've noticed, even the Chinese ones, you'll get 2 spare O-rings, and the O-rings go between 2 machine parts. 2 spare, not just because they think you're going to wreck the torch mercilessly, but there'll be a O-ring to go top and bottom, but I will go into that. So it's nice to see spares. So well done, and I think that's everything. Now that is pretty small. When I tell you about the output on this, you'll wonder how they've got this so small. So let's move all that rubbish out the way. Okay, let's have a look at this. I quite like it. I like this colour. This is the grey version. So you have one button, there's no tail clicker, even though I prefer a tail clicker, and you know why. I generally prefer a tail clicker because it's out of the way. It's harder to activate that by accident, but as a consequence of that, you get increased length. So if you're willing to put up with that increased length, it's not an issue. If you're not, then you want a side clicker. But the problem I have with side clickers is they're easy to accidentally knock. But I like this. In comparison to the Olight S2 baton here, see how that's not flush, so it's quite easy to activate by accident, whereas this one, almost like the, not as much, but also in the same style as the zebra lights, you've really got to go way past parallel to get that in there. So that's good, slightly recessed. I like the aesthetics of it. It has some heat sinks here, but when I show you about the output and how hot this gets, you'll see that they're pretty useless. They'll have a minimal effect, I would suggest, in my opinion. So D4, it's looking good, high power illumination. So let's have a look at this. So let's get in first. So slightly loud threads, but very smooth in each direction, very, very smooth, and a nice contact on that O-ring. That looks like quite a fat one. It might be a 1.5. Yeah, I think it's a 1.5. So the whole point of that is it stops water getting in. There should be one, yeah, so there's one up there as well. So the reason that you can screw top and bottom, you're probably thinking, what's the point when the battery only goes in there? It allows you to change the tube size. So when I talk about tube size, I'm talking about this central section, so you can put in different battery configurations, which is good to see. So let's have a look in here. Let's see what we've got. Now, it's supposed to come with beryllium springs, so that's the high quality ones. And you know what I'm like for springs. Now that looks very simple, non-cluttered, no dirt, decent thread there. Yeah, and it's greased, I can see. Yeah, that's a really thick spring. Yeah, the reason you want thick springs, especially on high drain devices, is you can sometimes get sag. What's really happening is everything has a resistance to it, and when you put a lot of electricity through, there's a chance of changing the structure. You're heating it and putting pressure on at the same time. There comes a point when you can sometimes get sag. Not that I'm an engineering expert, but that's how I understand it. So that's straight to the point. And I wonder if this is magnetic. Let's just see. No. So there's no magnet in there, no waste of space. That's fine. I don't always use features like that anyway. So let's have a look in here. Nice thick body. In fact, that looks like a double thickness. I just want to compare that to the S2 baton here. Let's have a look on thickness. Yeah, look. Much thicker than the Olight. Double, yeah. It's a double thickness, which is nice to see. Extremely rock solid. Great. I don't mind them putting the extra bit of weight in. It's worth it. And I just want to see down here. Can't see much. Let's get the flashlight so I can see down here. Yeah, same bottom. Yeah, very clean. I just want to check this spring. Yeah, very thick, nice spring. Okay, so let's get a battery in this and then I'll discuss the other features. So for this one, I'm going to use a Samsung 30Q, which comes in at about 3000 milliamp hours, and it's an 18650 form factor. one of my favourites actually. I used to EDC the S2 for a while, so you'll notice when you put the battery in and it rings home, watch, you'll get some flashes. So keep going, and bang, see those two flashes? That means it's ready. The other reason for that is lockout. Although this has an electronic lockout, because it gets so hot, you can do a physical lockout. So half turn the base, it ain't going on. Okay, and then to reactivate, two flashes, there you go. There is an electronic lockout, but we'll go through all those. So let's go through some of the specs before I discuss what's going on at the top here. Okay, so it's the Emisar D4. Now this will probably, or should, be using the V2 UI. I think the original units used a lower version, I think it was the V1. There was a few problems and issues, but they've been ironed out, and it's a much better UI experience. And when I say UI, I'm talking about user interface. That's how you interact with the options, by pressing the buttons and things like that. So this specific one, I'm using the Cree XPL High. Now this is a 5000K neutral. So 5000K just is the tint. There's 3 tint options for, in fact I'll go through them all actually. What you can get is you can choose 3 different LEDs to go in that. And when I talk about LED, that's the light emitting diode which produces the light. So starting off, you have the Nichia 9, it's a 219C, which is a 90 plus CRI, means it gives you a good colour reproduction, and that only comes in neutral white, and it gives you about 3000 lumens. Now 3000 lumens from this, bearing in mind you're getting about 950 from the S2, and from the BLF A6 you're getting about 1000-ish, depending. So 3000 lumens, and it gets better, okay? So your next option is the Cree again, Cree XP G2 S4, I think, and that comes in 3 tints. You've got like a neutral, which is close to sunlight, and then the far end of that you've got an ice white, or they call it just a white, and it's more white in the light spectrum, and lower you've got more of a yellow. They won't call it yellow, but that's the 3 tints. You've got neutral, which is like sunlight, then you've got more yellow and more white to either side. Now that'll give you 3300 lumens, and then comes the big boy. So this is the one I've got. I've got the XPL High. High stands for high intensity, and it comes in 3 tints. This is the neutral, so it's the mid-range. I prefer about a 5000K. 4800 to 5000 for me is my personal preference, because I like it to be like direct sunlight. There is no right or wrong answer with tints. It's personal preference. So I'm not going to suggest ever that you should or shouldn't get a certain tint. It's up to you. There is no right answer, and it sometimes depends what you're doing. I prefer a more neutral tint when I'm outside in grass and things like that. It just gives me a better reproduction, whereas other applications you may be better with another tint. So there is no right answer, but that's what I've chosen in this case. Now this one tops out at 4300 lumens. Now just to show you how high that is, 4300 lumens, that's coming into the ability of the BLF Q8. Now ignore the size, obviously, because there's 4 batteries in, this only has 1. There's more capacity, but just think about that. That's pumping out about 5000-ish. That's starting to creep up towards that, but look at the size. I mean, compare that to the S2 Baton. It's absolutely incredible. And yes, it's a bit thicker up the top, but not a lot, and it has to be for the heat it's going to produce. So we'll put that out the way. So beryllium springs, now it has step down and everything built in. Now, I want to talk about the top here. So what's going on here? Right, on a normal flashlight, in fact, it's time for a drone. So let me get my pen and use some of my branded stuff here that was sent by a mystery donator. Okay, so let's have a look. So what you've normally got is, imagine this is a single output here on a flashlight. You have a reflector. So, okay, so that's a smooth reflector. So normally you have the batteries in here, then you have your PCB and your LED, and then you have your reflector. So what's happening is that the LED light's coming out, and then the reflector is also focusing that. Okay, so yes, it's bouncing all over, but the main focus is going to be giving you a spot. Okay, so a smooth reflector will give you a signature like this on the wall. So if you bear with me a few seconds, I shall go and get one. So here's the SC01. So we'll turn this on, and if you look at this, see you have this central zone. There's your spot, and in this section here is your spill. So this is where the majority of the light's go. Now that's not particularly good for close-up work, is it? I would argue. You can pull back, and it doesn't obscure detail as much, okay? But up close it's poor. Yes, you can go down and say, well, we'll just put less power in as such, and then that solves the problem, but it still obscures detail to an extent. So that's your smooth reflector. Now the other option is to have a orange peel reflector. So there's bumps and aberrations within the physical reflector. And now what happens there is, yes, light's forced in this direction, but your signature is more like this. There's a transition zone. So I'll show you that now. So this has a orange peel reflector, so we'll turn it up a little. So if you compare that to that, see the difference? On this side you have a pronounced zone, so in the middle is your spot, and top and bottom circular is your spill. Now that doesn't really change unless you come right away, okay? Now compare that to this. You see how there's almost a transition zone. There is a spot there, but it doesn't obscure things as much, especially at a very reasonable pullback there. So it's trying to do both. It's trying to project the light to give you throw, to get it a distance, but it's trying to give you a bit of spill. In other words, pushing that light out around you in a close range. So you only have to come back to get that. The extreme example of that would be to use something like a TIR. Now, I'm going to call it a TIR lens, okay? Now, I know Dinner Fork Tongue will have me shot at dawn, and then I'll be hung, drawn and quartered, and then he will dance up and down on my grave singing hallelujah for saying this. But I call that a TIR optic because I want to make the differentiation between light going through a space and going through a medium. So for example, with a TIR, there's your LED, okay? This is a very crude representation of what's going on. So there's your LED. Light would normally be projected in this manner, okay? But because you've got this TIR optic, okay? Now again, there will be people who say it's not an optic, it's a reflector. I would argue that yes, that is correct because it's reflecting light. Look at the name, TIR, total internal reflection. So if it's reflecting something, it's a reflector, isn't it? But it's also going through a medium. There is no space yet. This is a solid piece. This is one medium. So the light all bounces around within this and comes out in a flood pattern. So I would argue that either would be right. There isn't. It's a semantics decision whether you want to call it. You know, if you go to the website for this very manufacturer, they describe this TIR setup as I think it's a Carclo quad LED optic. They don't call it reflector, they call it an optic. And I think the reason they do is because they want to make that differentiation like in the same way that I do. So when I say optic, I don't mean to annoy experts who would say, what's a reflector, you're an idiot. Okay, fair enough. But that's just my personal opinion. So anyway, so the extreme example is a TIR. So all the light is coming out. So look at the example. So even that's on full. There really is no spot and spill. It's one, yeah, there is when you get real close, but that transition's beautiful. There's no hot spot. Now that's kind of what they've been doing here. So, but you've got four of them. So instead of having one LED, you've just got four. That's the only difference. Now, yes, it hasn't got this pattern on, so it's going to have a little bit of throw. It works in a similar way, I would suggest, as the S2 by Olight. See, that doesn't have a texture. It's not a complete spill. There is a bit of projection. Okay, so let's go through some of the modes. So I'm going to move this out the way and we'll get on. Right, so we've gone through the LEDs. It's time to go through the modes. Okay, so there's before I do it, I mean, obviously I can go through who manufactures these and all sorts of things, but I'll keep it brief because I want to keep this a brief one because I'm going to do plenty of testing later on. Okay, so your first option is on and off. So just click the button, on, off, dead simple. Now, like the Q8, it uses ramping. So unlike other flashlights, for example, the S2 by Convoy, I'm doing a half press to cycle through the modes, you see? Half press, cycle through the modes. So you're bound and limited by those modes, okay? With this, you've got ramping, so you can ramp it up and you can ramp it down. So let's turn it on and we'll ramp it down to the lowest setting. Okay, now there are little blips that tell you what's happening. So when you do that, there's a little flash there, little flash, and so that's your lowest setting. And now I'll put up the figures on the screen because I want to try and get through this quickly. So there's your lowest setting. Okay, and then that's on off obviously, and it's got memory, so it's sticking to what you last had. And then you can ramp up, so there's a little blip there, that's half, keep ramping, bang, you've now got the sun in your hand. That even from there, that's too hot to keep my hand there. That's how much heat's being pumped out here. So I'm going to quickly turn that off before I set anything on fire. Okay, so your other modes are turbo, so if you want to quickly get a turbo, bear in mind, let's say you're down here and you think, oh, I want turbo, so just double click, so bang, straight to turbo. So that's handy, I like that. That's good for dazzling people if you're going to be attacked and things like that, although that's limited in fights, I would suggest. And then you have a battery check mode, so three clicks. Whoops, if I turn it off, so 1, 2, 3. See, so it flashes out you, so it gives you a representation of how much of your battery's left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's fine. So there's that gives you a visual representation without having to take it out and check things. I like that. That's a good handy added feature. And then after battery check, you have a way of turning on what they call tactical mode. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, see those flashes? Right, it's now in tactical mode. So tactical mode means you've got momentary turbo. So in the same way that you'd have with the Warrior by Olight, you've got an instant turbo just by pressing the button. So same in this case, so bang, straight to turbo, straight to turbo, straight to turbo. Although you could argue whether that's tactical or not. Whether they mean tactical as in to stop an assailant or whether they mean for shooting, but this isn't really the sort of optic I would use for shooting a handgun, but it's there and it's an option. So we'll turn that back off. So 1, 2, 3, 4, little flashes. We're back to normal mode where it just goes on and off and you can ramp up and down. Okay, and then you also have lockout. Now I've shown you that's one way of locking out, and I would recommend you do that because of the heat issues with this. Okay, and it flashes back on, but if you want to lock it out by a button, it's 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get a few flashes, and now won't go on. Brilliant. I love electronic lockout. All flashlights should come with it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stick it back on. Right, we're back to normal. That's an excellent feature. Highly appreciative of that. You also have a beacon mode, which I think is 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's your beacon mode, so it's going to continue to flash like that. That's handy for positioning and certain mission things you might want to get up to in the middle of the night, or marking a position. Let's say you go camping and you wander off for a wee. There's one possible use, or to signal your friends. So we'll turn that off. And then you also have thermal config mode, which I don't really want to go into in much depth, but it's 10 clicks, and then you hold the button down until it's too hot, then you let go. That's telling the flashlight, that's as hot as I want this unit to get. However, built in you have step down. So regardless of that, let's say we go to turbo here. Right, that's turbo. So let's watch what happens here, okay? So the heat's going to rise. The heat's now rising. Now it's making a decision. Can I keep doing this? Yeah, I'll keep going. And then there, see there was a step down? It's now reduced the output to contain that heat. There'll be there's another step down. So there's step down number 2. So it's reduced again. If you keep watching, there's step down 3, and there's step down 4. So what's happening there? Okay, that is absolutely boiling. I can't even touch that. Okay, so what's happening is, here's time, and there's your temperature. So as temperature rises, it's saying, no, I can't do that. You're going to damage the components. Let's have a step down. And then temperature starts rising again. Right, let's step down. Temperature's going up again. Let's step down. So what it's doing is it's making the sacrifice of reducing the output in order to save this thing from melting your hand. That is one issue which I'll discuss anyway. So we've gone through the basics. That's the important thing. But there's good points and there's bad points with this, and I want to go through them. Let's talk bad first. Okay. Heat. And the fact you've got to pay for a clip. That's a very small issue in regards to this, because heat is the main thing. So you shouldn't have to pay for that. I know it's a couple of dollars, but you shouldn't have to pay for it. Anyway, right, This produces so much heat, you can't hold it. You can kind of consider this to be a proof of concept. Someone has built it because they were able to. Whether you're going to be able to use those high modes or not is another matter. It's nice to have them there, it really is, and I'm extremely appreciative of the fact that they've built this. But I wouldn't buy this for a non-flashlight enthusiast. They're just going to burn themselves, literally and figuratively. I like it, but it just gets too hot. I've tested, during tests, you can't even hold it like that. I've literally, especially at the high levels, I've had to hold it like that. That's how far away I need to be. Now, is that ideal? Definitely not. You're wasting finger space. You're literally holding it with 2 fingers. So, yes, you can hold it like that and other things, but it's limited at the higher settings because of temperature issues. It really does get that hot. It's painful to hold, and I'm not a wimp. It's painful to hold, even in a cold night. So you need to think of it like this. This is a hot rod, and it's a specialist item for someone who really likes flashlights. So on one hand, we need to go back to Greek mythology. Can you remember Icarus? Well, his dad, if you remember, was the guy who made the labyrinth. Now, in order to escape Crete, he designed some wings made out of wax and feathers and all things like that. And if you remember what he said to Icarus, he says, you want to be careful, don't go too low, because the salt water will knock the wings, but you also don't want to go too high because the sun will melt the wings. And do you know what the son did? He went and bought one of these and he put it on full power too much and he fell out of the sky. So kind of like Icarus, you've got to be careful. Don't fly too close to the sun because you will burn yourself. So that's why I would use electronic lockout, or at the very minimum, manual lockout like that. You will burn yourself in your pants pocket if you're not careful. However, the other side of the argument could be, well, stop being boring. This is a great item. What a flashlight. It's a hot rod. And if you remember Kurt Cobain, remember what he said? It's better to burn out than fade away. So I'm going to leave you with that. On one side, you've got Icarus saying, too hot. And on the other side, you've got Kurt Cobain saying, shut your face. Hotter is better. It's better to burn out than fade away. So the decision's yours. So let's get on with some beam shots because I want to leave it at that and you need to make your own decisions.